Present day. Present time.
Hey guys, so you might have noticed that I put up a video yesterday. It was a compilation of some of my favorite creepypastas that I've covered ever since Spooktober 2016 up until last year's Spooktober 2018. Now originally, I wasn't even going to do Spooktober this year because I've just been so busy, it fell on the wayside. But I wanted to put something out, so I made up the compilation, and upon reviewing a lot of the old stories that I've done, there was some that I really enjoyed that I wanted to throw in, but my reading of them just wasn't good at all. So I kind of felt bad that I had to leave those stories behind. So now you're getting what today's video is, which is the Spooktober reboot compilations. These are some of my 5 favorite stories that I originally recorded and it just fucking sucked. So I hope you guys enjoy. I hope that they at least sound better than they originally did. Now I don't want to take up too much of your time with introductions, so let's just get right into it. I went camping about 3 weekends ago in the Huntville National Forest in Texas. It was me and 3 friends from high school who came home for the weekend. They're all in college, and usually we all get together at least once a year. For the camping trip, we plan to go backpacking deep in the forest, live off of fish that we catch and animals that we can trap. We've been doing this for a while in Texas and in numerous places such as Arizona, Colorado, if anyone's familiar with the Spanish Peaks there, and New Mexico. So we're pretty much used to anything that you could encounter out there. It was my turn to pick where we went camping, so I chose Huntsville. More accurately, it's Huntsville, New Waverly. So we drive up there, park our car in a camp parking lot, and start walking off into the forest. We had some laughs along the way, with everyone catching up with each other's lives. We walked until it started to get dark and set up camp where we stopped. Everyone gathered wood to make a fire, and we set up our tent. Then we do what we always do, try to scare each other with weird stories. Around this time, we started to smell something very faint. It was noticeable, but not overbearing. We couldn't put our finger on what it was, so we just carried on. Mike had to go piss, and he walked off into the forest. A few moments later, he came running back, piss all down his jeans like he missed really bad. Immediately, we all crack up and throw some jokes at him. Then we noticed that he was white as snow and trying to catch his breath. He starts screaming for us to follow him, and then he runs off. We all get serious and go follow him, not knowing what the problem was. We start to hear a faint scream and crying in the distance, in the direction we were running. It was pitch black away from the camp, and Mike had the only flashlight. He still had his from when he went to go take a piss while we left ours at camp. At this stage, we didn't have much of a choice but to follow the light, which was frantically pointing here and there in front of him. The scream gets closer, and Mike starts to slow down. We then notice a ratty old cabin that looked like it was abandoned, except for a faint light that we could see from one of the old mildew-covered windows. The crying was intense. Whoever it was couldn't breathe enough to let out a full yell. We all followed Mike up to the front door, and we could all hear the crying from inside. As soon as he knocked on the door, it stopped. We all waited and heard really heavy footsteps walking fast to the door. There was a giant slam against the door and the sound of the bolt unlocking. Then nothing. We waited for a bit, knocked a few more times, but still nothing happened. We all walked around the house since there was no fucking way any of us were leaving each other's side. We noticed a window, which was a good way up. Alex took a deep breath and asked us to give him a boost so he could see inside. Me and Mike lifted him up to the window. We watched him brush away dirt and webs from the window and place his face close to the window in an attempt to see anything inside. It was a quick beat, and then suddenly he breathed in fast and let out a loud scream. Then he fell back from the window, screaming bloody murder the whole way. We all tried to calm him down, but he was hysterical. We went to him, but he started to shake, punch, kick, you name it, and then he took off towards the camp. Well, none of us wanted to be separated, so we all ran close behind him. We caught up to him and grabbed him and set him down. The fire was dying out, so I grabbed some nearby wood that we collected and added it to the fire. My hands were shaking and I just had to do something. I went back to Alex and we all tried to calm him down. He wouldn't, and he just kept screaming, and he was breathing so hard that eventually he fainted. All of us were terrified now, and we all just kept the fire high until sunrise. Periodically, Alex would wake up and start screaming just like before. By sunrise, he was up and looked catatonic, just mumbling to himself and whimpering. Me and Mike decided to go look at the cabin now that it's daylight. We searched where we thought it was, except there was nothing there. Nothing at all. The indistinct smell from last night had now grown into a very strong smell of something dead. Something stale. We headed back to the camping site. When we got there, we found Alex had chewed into the sides of his face and swallowed so much blood that he was throwing up. John was at his back and he looked like he was about to die from exhaustion. I guess we all looked that way. I just didn't notice until I saw his face. Alex said quietly that we need to leave. Now. We all started to pack up the tent. It was around noon when it started to rain really heavily and the sky started to grow really dark. Alex started to go into a panic. He went and grabbed a big stick and yelled at us to leave it and leave now, or he'd knock us out and drag us out of there himself. Mike started to yell at him and they started to fight. We broke it up and finished packing, and then we started to make our way back. After a little while, we arrived at a creek that we had crossed the previous day. Only it was flooded over now, and the water was moving too fast for us to cross it. Alex started to scream again, yelling at Mike for taking his time to pack up the damn tent when we could have gotten out of there. This went on for a while until we finally convinced Alex to calm down and just tell us what happened. He said as soon as he put his face to the glass, a face on the other side did the same thing and started to smile. Really big. It had dark eyes and a dark mouth, which was much bigger than Alex's. As the smile got as large as it could, a giant shadow behind it swung something down and sliced its face off. The face was stuck to the window, and he said it started to laugh quietly as it slid down. Mike was still pissed off, and although he wouldn't admit it, I could tell he was getting seriously freaked out, and he started to argue with him again. We eventually started to follow the creek for a way to cross. Then we started to see toys floating in the creek. Like really old toys, old Barbie dolls and baby dolls. This wasn't like any old trash floating in the creek though. This was like a lot of Barbies, a lot of baby dolls. One washed up towards the side and Mike picked it up. It had some kind of voice chip that was dying and started to say some gurgling words we couldn't understand, followed by its sad excuse for laughter. Then it sounded like it was whispering. We thought the batteries must be dying, and he threw it down. We kept going and the sun was starting to set. Alex was freaking out more now and was whimpering and breathing heavily. We all started to see shadows move behind trees, something we all called BS on until we were all seeing it. It was barely light out and we stopped when we saw the cabin right in front of us. None of us knew what to think. Mike says, "This is bull, I'm going in there." Alex tried to stop him. We all did. All of us just wanted to go home. Mike tells us all to fuck off and do our own thing, and he doesn't care anymore, and this is all bull. We all started to hear hundreds of the same sort of baby dolls before, laughing, whispering, and trying to sing. We start to move forward past the cabin, all of us, and kept pushing forward. We smelled something dead in the air. Something stale, the same something as before. We started to hear something crying and something screaming. We kept on going, and we eventually crossed the creek and left the woods. We get back to the car and we got in. It's pitch black now, and we just start to drive. We are about to get on the 45 to Houston, but the road is under construction and can't be accessed. It points to a detour. As we head towards the detour, it seems to be a small, bumpy dirt road going into the woods. We then see a young, pretty-looking girl come up to us. She looked like she was in trouble. She approaches the passenger side door and she looks like she's really drugged up or beaten up or something. Alex doesn't roll down the windows, nor does he open the door. She reached for the handle and he immediately locked it. She puts her face up to the window and starts to smile. Really big. We floor it. Alex starts to cry and scream, and we're all breathing real heavy. We finally cut onto a street that takes us to the 45, and we just take it the whole way. When we get back to my apartment, everyone doesn't know what to say, and we all break apart and go our separate ways. Mike messaged me later and says he's going to go back. I try to convince him not to, and all he said was that it was all just our minds screwing with us. I think he just wanted to prove to himself that he wasn't scared. I can smell that stench everywhere now. I don't go out much anymore. I just stay in and I don't answer the door. Last week, everyone I met was acting really strange. Both people that I knew for a long time as well as total strangers. When I went to my dad's place to eat supper with him, he just watched me strangely when I was sitting down. He didn't say a word the whole time. I kept asking him, "What's wrong?" But he just slowly shook his head. When I was leaving to go home, I turned to wave. He had black eyes and an open mouth like he was in pain. When I started to walk back, he shut the door and bolted it. I stayed there knocking and knocking. Nothing. I called him. His phone was disconnected. I even called the police. Halfway through the questions they were asking me, the connection started to fade into static. I could hear faint mumbling, singing, and laughing. Mike has completely vanished. There's not even a record of him being alive. When I call Alex's house, they talk to me like I'm some kind of salesman. They say they don't know any Alex and to please stop calling. The person who tells me that is Alex's mother. I can't even get a hold of John. Someone knocked on my door, and when I went to look, I saw a face completely covering the people, and a giant smile started to form. I called the cops again, and instead of turning to static, they got really strange. "Sir, are you affected by any drugs at the moment?" "No." "Are you coming home anytime soon?" "Excuse me?" "Come home." And the phone call just ended. My mail slot swings every now and then. Someone is sliding pieces of baby dolls through it. I try to call people now, and all I can hear is static and bad baby doll noises and this crying and screaming. My TV is busted, but when I go piss, I can hear it on. I feel like I might be going insane. Whoever lives above me started to scream in pain and is crying deeply recently. I hear giant footsteps from their apartment. I hear bangs and then something falling to the ground. From the neighbors to the right of me, I can hear what sounds like a baby that just never gets tended to. And then it sounds like a baby doll whose batteries are dying. My phone has been ringing now, and it's Alex telling me things in a language that I've never heard before, nor could I even manage to repeat. I kept getting emails of pictures that were just black and with small colorations. Now, I can't even access my email. Someone knocks on the door, then they slam against it. I hear the bolts unlocking one by one, and I run to make sure to lock all of them back up. And then I sit down and I begin to cry. Everybody knows that if you surf the web long enough, you'll see some pretty sick shit. This is especially true if you intentionally dwell into the dark underbelly of the internet. I've seen quite a few things I don't care to admit to, but one thing that I will always remember is a site called normalpornfornormalpeople.com. The first strange thing about the site was that I didn't find it by actually looking for it. It was emailed to me by someone I didn't know. The email was as follows. "Hi there. Found this site. Is very nice. Thought you might like. Normalpornfornormalpeople.com. Pass it on for the good of mankind." Pretty standard issue chain letter, although the URL and the last remark really piqued my curiosity. I was having a very boring day when I got this, so I made sure my antivirus was working, and then I clicked on it. It was a very average, very generic looking site. It gave the impression that the creators just barely gave a shit about making it look professional. The author seemed to have a very tenuous grasp on English, and on the front page was a long, boring, and incoherent rant that I don't remember or have saved. The site had a strange tagline, which even today people haven't figured out the meaning of, which was, "Normal porn for normal people, a website dedicated to the eradication of abnormal sexuality." And from the sound of that, I wasn't sure if I was here to watch porn or if I'd stumbled onto some kind of eugenics program. But I was here now, and I was very, very curious to see what quote-unquote normal people got their rocks off to. So I scrolled down the rant, and nothing. The page didn't seem to link anywhere else, and I was about to leave when I noticed every word of the rant was its own hyperlink. So I clicked one of them, and was sent to a white page with a very long list of links in the form of normalpornfornormalpeople.com/random string of letters. So I stopped for a minute and asked myself if I really wanted to waste God knows how much time clicking random links that will likely give me a virus that will rape my computer. I figured I'd just try it for like maybe 5 minutes, just to see if anything came up. I clicked one of the links and was sent to another page. This page apparently had totally different URLs than the last one. I was just about to say fuck this when I clicked on the third link and a video download came up. It was called peanut.avi. It was a 30-minute video of a man, a woman, and a dog in a kitchen. The woman would make a peanut butter sandwich and the man would set it down for the dog to eat. This was all that happened for 30 minutes. It was obvious that the cameraman had to stop filming and wait until the dog was ready to eat again, and the dog seemed rather sick by the end of it. And now I know what you're thinking. What the hell does this have to do with porn? I still have no clue. I've seen a little over 24 videos from this site, and the majority had no sexual activity at all. After watching peanut.avi, I went on a certain image board I frequent to play online show and tell, like I always do with weird shit like this. But someone had already made a thread about it. Some guy who had received the same chain letter I did. The image board thread got a lot of people with nothing better to do than to dig through the site, and that's how I saw the other videos. Most of those 24 videos were very uneventful and consisted of people talking to the cameraman in a room with nothing in it but a desk and a few chairs. I mean literally nothing on the walls or in terms of furniture. The whole room had a very cold, sterile feel to it. The conversations were just idle banter about previous jobs or embarrassing childhood moments. I kept expecting some kind of discussion about what the people were filming or what the site was about, but of course, nothing. You would never know these videos had anything to do with porn if you saw it out of context. I will say one thing though. The people who appeared in these videos were quite attractive. However, the other videos that actually did feature content which I suppose could be called sexual is where things got weird. I'll give a brief description of these stranger videos. If you're really eaten up with curiosity, you can try to hunt them down on a torrent site. LitClean.avi. A 10-minute video filmed by a hidden camera in which we see a repairman working on a washing machine for the first 2 minutes. When it's fixed, the repairman talks to the owner briefly and then leaves. The owner checks to make sure the repairman is gone, and he begins to lick all over the top of the washing machine. This goes on for 7 minutes. Jimbo.avi. A 5-minute video of an obese mime performing his act. It was actually pretty funny, particularly one part where he pretends to pull up a chair, then pretends that it breaks because of his weight. In the last 30 seconds of the video, the camera cuts to static briefly and cuts back to the man sobbing quietly, still wearing mime outfit and his makeup. Some kind of obscure fetish? Diana.avi. 4-minute video in which the cameraman talks to a woman in a different room from the interview room. This room looks like one you find in a normal person's house, except where they are is never specified, as Diana only talks about her violin playing. She obviously plays her violin, but she keeps getting distracted by something. I didn't notice this until someone on the image board thread pointed it out, but if you look at the mirror in the background, you can see a fat man in a chicken mask masturbating. Jessica.avi. Another 4-minute cameraman video. This time he's outside a house, talking to another young woman. They talk about canoe rides. The camera zooms out to reveal these city streets behind them occasionally. The strange thing is, no one so far has been able to identify where this street is. Guesses have ranged everywhere from Europe to Australia to the Philippines, but there's yet to be a match for the street shown in the video. Tongue-tied.avi. 10-minute video. The first 5 minutes consist of an elderly woman making out with a mannequin. The video cuts out like it did in Jimbo.avi halfway through, and the scene is now a group of mannequins huddled together in a circle around the camera. The lights have been dimmed and the elderly woman is nowhere to be seen. From this point on, there is no sound. Stumps.avi. 5-minute long video where a man with no legs is attempting to breakdance on a DDR mat in what looks like the kitchen from Peanut.avi, but much dirtier. There's a radio playing music unseen in the background, but it stops at the 4-minute mark when the man collapses on the mat in exhaustion. He breathes heavily and pleads with someone off-screen to let him rest. This off-screen person becomes terrifyingly enraged and yells at him to keep dancing, which he does. You can hear this off-screen person begin to scream as the video ends abruptly. Privacy.avi. The woman from Diana.avi is masturbating on a mattress in the interview room, where the man from Stumps.avi walks around on his hands while wearing some kind of goblin mask. The door in this room was always closed in the other videos, but now it's open. In this video, the only light is in the room and the hallway is dark. Near the end of the video, you can see an animal quickly run through the hallway. And finally, the last video we uncovered. Useless.avi. In this 18-minute video, a blonde woman from the previous videos is tied down to a mattress in the interview room. She attempts to scream, but her mouth is taped over. After 7 minutes, a man in a black suit and mask opens the door, but he does not enter. He holds the door open for the animal that was running in the hall in the previous video. It's revealed to be an adult chimpanzee, its hair shaved and its entire body painted red. When the chimp enters the room, the masked man closes the door behind it. The chimpanzee sniffs the air for a moment. It may have been blind, and notices the woman tied down to the mattress. It goes into a frenzy and begins to maul her. The assault goes on for a grueling 7 minutes, until the woman finally dies. The chimp eats flesh from her corpse for 4 minutes as the video ends. The thread exploded with activity after this video was uncovered, and people discussed it long into the night. When I came back to the image board the next day, I found that the thread was deleted. I tried to start another one and they banned me. I tried emailing the guy who sent me the chain letter with the site's URL, sent him 5 messages and never got a response. I've tried to discuss this website on various places and I got banned frequently. The site itself was also deleted about 3 days after useless.avi was uncovered, likely because someone contacted the authorities about it. The only proof that normalpornfornormalpeople.com ever existed was a few screen caps people took, and videos from the site that people saved and uploaded onto torrent sites. The most popular which being useless.avi, which found its way onto a few gore sites. Wherever you upload them to, all of the videos from normalpornfornormalpeople.com get deleted after a while. Once, in a place far away, a very long time ago, there was a boy named Roger. He was tall, but a bit round. He lived in a big city where unusual things seemed to happen every day. For example, his uncle died. Anyway, Roger had lots of enemies in the city. All the people he used to like were now his enemies because he changed. He used to be a really successful banker named Ron, but he decided to go another way. And now, he is a hobo named Roger. Because of this, his friends thought they didn't like him anymore, so they said, "You're our enemy now." And Roger was like, "Oh no, I have no friends, but loads of enemies." Roger lives day to tomorrow by the change he gets off strangers outside McDonald's. But sometimes when he gets enough money, he goes to the local shopping center called Teco. He can only buy things when they are on sale. So he only buys things when they are on sale because he doesn't have any much money. Sometimes he even gets enough change to buy chicken when it's on sale, and he goes into KFC and says, "Can you cook this for me?" And they do it because they are his enemies and they spit in the food. Yuck. Today, on the most windy and stormy and rainy and cloudy and sad of days, he decided he needed to eat and went to Techo. When he went inside, there was no baskets. This was weird. Roger thought that they must be giving them a break today, so he kept going. He saw that the bread was on sale, so he was going to buy it, and then a big fat hairy man ran up and told him, "No, that's not for you." And he took the sale sign away, which made the bread go back up to $100,000. This is all in the future, so that's normal in the future. Roger made a face similar to this D:. And he said, "But if you don't give me that, I will strive." And the fat man laughed, and his fat went bouncy from laughing. Then one of Ron's enemies died, so Ron felt his anger rising. That happens when his enemies die, and he punched the man so hard, his fat fell off, and the man was so angry that he cried blood. Then the lights went out so fast that Roger knew he was going to be murdered. A black mist came out of the cereal boxes and the bacon was flying everywhere, pancake mix splashing over the counters, freezers freezing at higher temperature than normal so that it was freezing the frozen pizzas too much. Ron ran way far away to that aisle that's always full of people. It has like loads of sweets and crisps. Yummy. There was like 15 monsters there, all black with eyes oogieing with blood and tears that looked like bacon, but were actually dead people's skin. He screamed, "Fat man, help!" But when the fat man came here, he said, "You punched my fat, and now you will pay. I am your enemy." And then he ran and went inside a freezer, but forgot that the freezers froze too hard, and now he died from freeze. Roger ran to an exit and was almost out when he tripped on something. He looked down and saw his enemy saying, "Help me, the pancakes were too string." And then he said, "No, I am Roger. You were Ron's friend, not mine, smelly." And he ran out the door. He was safe. He got out. He escaped. He avoided death. He was alive. He was tall. He was safe. He was Roger. Then he went back in for the bread, but forgot about the monsters. So when he got the bread, the monsters came out from between the slices and cried blood from their mouths, saying, "We are your enemies, Ron." And he said, "How do you know my old name?" And they ate him, and he fell down on the floor crying from death, and his last words were, "I am all of your enemies." Then he fell down and died, but just before he died, he said, "I will now be a supermarket monster." So remember, when you're in the supermarket, remember that Ron is waiting. In the future though, because it's in the future, remember? Have you ever heard of the game Bloody Mary? It's what kids play when they want to scare each other by standing in the dark in front of a mirror and saying Bloody Mary 3 times. It's always used to show off how brave you are to your friends or scare the shit out of them. So, what is Hitori Kakurenbo? And what does Hitori Kakurenbo have to do with Bloody Mary? Well, Hitori Kakurenbo, also known as one-man hide-and-seek, is believed to be a ritual for contacting the dead, and is a game played in Japan as a show of bravery, similar to how Bloody Mary is played by kids in the West. It's said that these spirits which are wandering restless on the earth are always looking for bodies to possess. In this ritual, you summon such a spirit by offering it a doll instead of a human body. Note that many sources warn that playing this game is dangerous, so with that in mind, remember that if you play, you do so at your own risk. Anyway, enough with the introductions, here's how to play. You will need the following materials: a stuffed doll with limbs, some rice, enough to stuff the doll full, something from your body. Most people use a bit of hair or some fingernail clippings. Blood can also be used, but it is not recommended. You can also try your luck if you want to go with something silly like piss or shit, but just remember it has to be from your body and not someone else's. You'll need a needle and some crimson thread, a sharp-edged tool such as a knife or a glass shard or even scissors. Note that it's recommended to not use something overtly dangerous, such as a knife or glass shard. Generally, you'll want something that won't severely injure or even kill you in case things do go wrong. I've heard of people using sharpened pencils before. A cup of salt water or alcohol. Some guides say that since this is a Japanese ritual, sake works better, but your results may vary. A bathtub, bucket, or wash basin. Most guides seem to recommend using a bathtub, so I'll just refer to it as a bathtub. A hiding place, preferably a room purified by incense and a fuda. So once you have all your materials, it's time to prepare. So first you'll give a name to the doll. This could be anything but your own name. It's also recommended that you don't name the doll after somebody you actually know. Cut open the doll and remove the stuffing. Once all the stuffing is removed, replace it with the rice. It's said that the rice represents innards and it also has the role of actually attracting the spirits. Sew the doll back up with the crimson thread and wrap the excess around the doll. The crimson thread represents a blood vessel and it seals the spirits up inside the doll. Now it's time to get ready because the game starts at 3 a.m. At 3 a.m., take the doll into your bathroom, fill the tub with water, and hold the doll in both hands and say out loud, "For the first game, your name is going to be it." Say this 3 times, then drop the doll into the water. Turn off all the lights in the house, go back into the hiding place, and switch on the TV. Make sure the TV is set to a channel that is just static, and remember that absolutely no light can be on in the house except for the TV. Close your eyes and count to 10. When you're finished, open your eyes and grab your edge tool and go back into the bathroom. Out loud announce, "I found you," doll's name, and stab the doll with your edge tool. By cutting the thread off, you break the seal and release the spirits that you have trapped. Say, "You are the next it," doll's name, and put the doll back in its place. Leave the still impaled doll in the bathroom, either in the water or on the floor. This is a good time to note that the word for it in a Japanese game of hide and seek or tag is oni. Onis are devils. So you're essentially saying the doll is a devil at this point, if you want to look at it that way. Now quickly leave the room and return to your hiding place. Most people tend to choose a closet. Wherever you hide, just make sure it has your salt water or alcohol. If you go out of the hiding place without the salt water or alcohol, you might encounter something wandering around in your house which might harm you in some way. Apparently the way to feel the presence of the something wandering around is to watch what happens on the TV. Make sure you stay quiet while you're hiding. People have reported strange occurrences while they were hiding. These include strange sounds such as footsteps, things being moved, and voices. Bad smells from out of nowhere. Changes in temperature, the TV suddenly switching on or off, and the volume changing dramatically. The feeling of being touched or pulled on. Make sure, no matter what, to stay hidden as long as possible. Some guides say to not let the ritual go on for more than 1 or 2 hours. Others say to wait until sunrise to end the ritual. Ending the ritual. Note that these steps are incredibly important and should not be half-assed. Pour half the cup of salt water or alcohol into your mouth. Do not drink any of it, just keep it in your mouth. Begin to search for the doll. It might not necessarily be in the bathroom where you left it. Make sure to not spill any of the salt water or alcohol, no matter what happens. Once you find the doll, pour whatever it is in your cup over the doll and then spray what's in your mouth over it as well. Announce "I win" 3 times. This is supposed to end the ritual, but as an extra precaution, make sure you burn the doll and discard it once it's dry. People have reported that they've become ill, gotten into an accident, or experienced some other form of misfortune after playing this game. Others also report that they continue to feel the presence of someone or something even after the game has ended. Now here's some other things to keep in mind while you're playing. This is hide and seek alone. Emphasis on alone. Make sure nobody else is in the house with you when you're playing. There is a possibility that they may be found instead of you, and something terrible will happen to them. Don't go outside of the house until the ritual is completely finished. You don't need to keep the salt water or alcohol in your mouth the whole time you're hiding, just when you're finishing the ritual. While you will be performing this ritual by yourself, it's not a bad idea to have some people you trust outside of the house while you're playing. Since the ritual shouldn't leave the house, this should keep them out of harm's way, and they'll be there to help you in case something goes seriously wrong. Because of this, you might also want to keep a mobile phone on you at all times during the ritual. Just keep it on silent. Also, it's a good idea to leave all the doors in your house unlocked, including the front door. You don't want to come across a locked door while you're trying to play the game. Most important, whatever you do, please don't stop this ritual halfway. You must do it through to the end. If you're familiar with Fableforge and his instructions on how to play the Three Kings game, you might remember him saying, if you half-ass it all the way so that it won't work. Worst you can do is take it seriously enough for it to work, and not seriously enough to be prepared for the consequences. This doesn't just apply to his Three Kings game, but any ritual, including Hitori Kakurenbo. And again, remember, this is a dangerous ritual, and I will not be responsible for what happens to you if you do decide to try. To those who would try anyway, good luck. You're going to need it. Here's my story. Be 16, be black, and have family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land down in Huntville. Uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers they put out in the woods for hunting or camping. My down south cousins suggest that we go out there to camp. They know I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they tease the fuck out of me. Collect food, kill a pig and some chickens, and bring necessities to camp out for a few days. We get to the camp and it's obvious something's weird. Air has this weird electric smell, like right before a storm, like ozone. We think nothing of it and unpack and go down to a little creek to swim for a few hours. All of a sudden, some older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm and says hello and asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. Tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and say we're camping out. He tells us we need to be real careful out here and to stick together, since there was a big animal in the woods. His son, who is my age, asks if he can stay and hang out with us. He says okay. So we end up playing football. Sticking around me, there's the white kid Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. In total, there were 5 girls and 6 boys, and we were all around 15 to 17. We ended up just sticking the day away. So we head back to the camp, and we started pulling out some stuff for a campfire, even though both the trailers had kitchenettes. Tanner says that his family's property sits right up against my uncle's. He wants to run home and ask his dad if he can come out camping with us. My cousin Rooster says he'll go with him since it's going to get dark soon. One of the girls also wanted to tag along. It's about 7 o'clock, and it's starting to get pretty dark. They take flashlights and take the trail toward Tan's property. The rest of us chill, and we make s'mores, drink, and kiss on the girls. About 30 or 40 minutes later, there's the smell of ozone again. You could smell it over the smell of the fire we had started. This really nasty, coppery smell, like right after you've had a nosebleed and it stopped. It wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that nasty metallic back of your throat smell. We immediately think that it's some kind of electrical malfunction, or someone left a hot plate on or some shit. We search the trailers and nothing is on, and we can all smell it. All of a sudden we can hear people booking it down the path toward us, and Rooster, Tan, and the girl all come running into the clearing, out of breath. And they don't even break stride, they all just run into the trailer right by where the fire is. We all get the fuck out of there and into the trailers. They end up calming down, even Rooster's crying his fucking eyes out at this point. All the while, the fire is guttering lower and lower, so my other cousins say fuck it and are about to go outside to get the generator out of the shed between the trailers. Tanner goes, fuck no, lock the front door, ain't nobody else going outside. He's been crying too, and his eyes are bloodshot and puffy and his pants are dirty as shit. He goes on to tell us that they went up to his house. His father said sure he'd go out camping, but to make sure they were careful on the way back, and that maybe they should take one of the hunting rifles just in case. Evidently, Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before. One of their pigs had come up, ripped up and half eaten. They assumed it was just some big cats or coyotes, even though they don't usually fuck with live animals. He'd gone upstairs and packed his stuff and told his dad that they would be okay without the rifle because coyotes avoid people. So they started walking back towards where we were camping. So Rooster finally stops crying and shaking. The girl already had, but she was just staring at the window with a dumb look on her face. He says they'd gotten halfway into the woods toward the camp when they started to hear shit in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time, so they weren't sure at first what the fuck it was. The girl says that she heard something in the bushes right off the trail, and they all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing in the back of the woods in a little hollow. Rooster said they shouted at him and told him that he was scaring the fuck out of them, and what a dick he was. He says that's when they realized the guy was facing away from them. So they keep walking, and they start smelling that nasty coppery ozone smell. They say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side, and it's a dude standing in the forest, backward, slightly closer to the path. So now they start power walking, and Tan keeps going, I should have taken the fucking rifle. As they're telling the story, the smell is super strong, even inside the cabin. They say that after they started walking faster, a kind of low gibbering had started coming from both sides of the wood. And as they started booking it back to the trailer, the girl said she had flashed her flashlight out into the woods to the side of them, and had seen something jerking itself through the woods. The gibbering just got louder and louder, and when they could see the light from our campfire, something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them onto the track, and they just flat out ran as hard as they could to the trailer. So we're out in the fucking woods, and we're assuming at this point it's some rednecks or some shit trying to fuck with us. All of a sudden, my other cousin, Junior, starts going on about how he went to school with a native kid that was telling him about the Goatman or some shit. We promptly tell him to shut the fuck up because we don't need any spooky talk right now. But he just keeps going on about how it's the fucking Goatman, and we're in his woods and blah blah blah. Now at the time, I'd never heard of this Goatman or anything like that, but then a couple of years ago, the year right before I graduated from college, I had a Meenom for a roommate, and I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a fucking man with the head of a goat, and he can shapeshift, and he gets them on groups of people to terrorize them. It's also supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo, and it's bad mojo to even talk about it, and even worse if you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16, so my cousin's going, the Goatman's gonna get in, and he's gonna fucking get us. The girls are all terrified, and my cousins and I are fucking trying to figure out if it's just some hillbillies or if it's some animal. So all of a sudden, the smell just goes away. Like, to this day, I haven't experienced anything like it. Like, usually smells fade away or lessen. It just literally was there 1 second, and then not the next second. So it's after an hour, making it around 9 or 10. We've stopped shitting bricks long enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again. We figure it was just some assholes trying to fuck with us, so we don't go back home, because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or some crazy shit. So we stay another night, and for the main part of the night, nothing really happens. At about 1 in the morning, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. As someone is finishing some too spooky story, I don't remember what it's about, the smell comes back. It's so fucking strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting. I stand up and you can actually feel how clammy the air is. I say that we should get inside and that this just isn't right, and we should have just fucking left. So we all get back inside, and we're standing around. My cousin just keeps going on about how it's the Goatman, and my cousin Rooster tries to shut him the fuck up, and all the while I'm just feeling that something is wrong, and I can't figure out what the fuck it is. We end up just sitting in there for a while. The smell is just as strong, and we're terrified and all huddled up in this camper. We end up cooking brats for everyone because nobody else wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 4 brats. We have a total of 3 packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everyone a hot dog. I get mine, and after a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot to get another one. He starts grumbling about how I get 2 brats and everyone else only got 1, and I look at him like he's fucking stupid. I tell him that everyone only got 1 because there was only 12 brats. If he wants more, he should open up a new pack and cook some more. That's when the girl that had been outside with Rooster and Tan just starts screaming, "Oh Jesus, oh Lord, get it out." She's crying and shivering, and then it dawns on the cousin standing up what the fuck is wrong. Me and him both glance around the room, and then I feel my heart fucking sink. I run the fuck out of the cabin and the girl runs out with us. The trailer door is banging against the side of the trailer and everybody books it out of the cabin. One of my cousin's friends asks us what the fuck is wrong. I start counting us. There's only 11 now. I shit you not, my cousin verified. There had been 12 people in the cabin. But being that everybody didn't really know each other that well, nobody had really noticed the whole fucking time that there was an extra person. And then I realized earlier that I'd kind of noticed something was off. You know how when you're just dicking around and having a good time that you don't really sweat the smallest stuff and you don't always keep track of certain stuff? I'm dead sure that someone else had been in the trailer with us and they'd been there for at least a fucking day eating with us. What makes it worse is I could figure out which one because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other person, or the Goatman rather. The girl kept praying to Jesus and we're all sitting outside. Eventually we get big ass sticks and go back in the cabin. But there's nobody in there. We count again, and there's 11 people. We go back into the trailer and lock the door. We explain what the fuck happened, and the girl says that she realized too, and that's when she was about to say something. And then the person sitting next to her grabbed her leg really hard and leaned over toward her and said something she couldn't understand. So we're pretty much scared as fuck and we huddle together and I fall asleep. When I wake up, the sun is just coming up and half the people are asleep and the other half are packing our shit up. We all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up. And some people think that I'm just fucking around and still want to stay in the trailers. I just want to get the fuck out of the woods. The girl's name was Kiera, the one that the Goatman had touched. Anyway, I asked her if she really thinks there was something bad. And she says that she just wants to go home and she doesn't want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we decide to split up. The 4 of us that want to go can go. But I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin and it's my uncle's and I have to lock up. I'm super pissed at this point because I feel like people aren't taking this shit seriously and I definitely didn't want to be out in the woods for another night. I spend the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 guys and 4 girls, to get the fuck out of Dodge. Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle and says that he's going to be back, so now there's just 7 of us left by 4 p.m. At around 5 p.m. he hasn't made it back yet, and we're getting extremely fucking antsy. And the only reason why I stopped begging them to go back was because Hannah went to get the gun. It's about 5:30 or so when the one cousin that did stay says that the girl Kiera is outside. We all look outside and sure enough, she's standing right by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, if she was so fucking scared, why the hell did she come back? And that's when I get this nasty feeling in my gut. Keep in mind the whole time the coppery smell had been gone. Now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I say this to the rest of them and everybody, and these are the people that wanted to stay in the fucking woods after we had the goddamn Goatman in our midst, is laughing at me and asking if I set this up to scare them. I'm looking at them like, I'm not fucking bullshitting you at all right now. I asked them why the fuck would I play like that? So one of the girls goes outside to get Kiera. She gets halfway to her and stops. Kiera starts heaving. I don't know how the fuck to describe it, sort of like someone with their back turned was laughing without actually making any noise. It was this fact that made me realize there was not a fucking sound in the whole woods. It was dead silent. This was like later in September, so it was still fairly hot at the time, but it was super chilly some days too, and you could usually hear big ass geese honking or some kind of birds or squirrels chit-chatting. So I step out of the door and tell her to come back in the fucking trailer right goddamn now. She backs up into the trailer and we lock the fucking door. We pull down all the shades except one and there's a guy there in a chair to watch her. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so. The guy turns to say that she's still there and there's a huge fucking bang on the door. We all jump the fuck up and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The banging is super fucking loud. So now my cousin is holding one of the girls and the other 2 are just kind of giggling with nervous laughter and me and the other 2 guys are shitting bricks. Then we hear Tan and he's screaming, "Let me the fuck in, stop fucking playing." So we go over to the door and open it, and he stumbles in with the rifle. There's nobody else outside. Evidently, he had walked up to the campsite, and nothing weird had happened in the forest, but he'd seen a girl. Mind you, he said it was not Kiara standing there. When he had gotten to the edge of the clearing, she had turned toward him with the slack-jawed look and just stared him down, slowly tracking him as he walked around the outside of the clearing towards the camp. He said it wasn't until he was almost halfway to the trailer that he had realized that she was getting closer to him. She had started out by the fire, and without him even seeing her move, she had been turning, inching closer. He said he had ran the rest of the way back to the cabin thinking it would open, and when he got to the door it was locked. He turned and it was about half the distance to the door. He looks around the room and then gets super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers, "You know there are only 7 of us here, right?" I get that feeling where your stomach drops to your nuts. It had been back inside the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where, and then when we all went outside to talk to each other in the day, it had just slipped right back in. We looked out the window and there's nobody out there. So we recount everyone, and then basically I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier, and everybody says 8. I say, "Well, how many are there now?" They all do the count, and they realize that there's now only 7 people in the cabin. So Tan had brought back a couple boxes of ammo and his rifle, and he had told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the forest because he didn't think his dad would believe him if he said it was the Goatman. He says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours, and that in the morning we can all go back to his place and his cousin will drive us home. Now I'm really fucking terrified, but I feel at least a little better because we can be American and shoot the fuck out of whatever it is if it comes back. But then my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks that I'm trying to be funny and prank them, and that she's getting really fucking scared and that I'm not funny. He keeps telling her I'm not that kind of person. And she says, "Well, how do we know that the girl wasn't just Tanner in a wig? Or if it's really the Goatman, how do we know that this is the real Tanner and that the Goatman didn't just kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun?" So we get into a huge argument about this, where me and Tanner are like, we could seriously be in danger because at the very least, someone has been sneaking themselves into our fucking trailer without us knowing and mingling with us, and at worst, something bad is in the forest fucking with us. One of the girls is crying and saying she wants to go right now, and we're trying to tell her that we shouldn't because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point, the sun is starting to go down and it's getting a little cloudy out. We eat something and turn on the radio for a while, but we can't really get a station out there with anything decent. So we turn it off at around the time that Tan's cousin shows up. He was like 19, I think. At this point, the sun is just barely over the horizon, and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer, and we whisper to Tan, asking if he's sure that that's his cousin, and he says yes. The guy looks behind him and all around the camp. Then he walks in. He kind of glances at us and looks a little confused. He says, "Where's your other little buddy at? I figured she'd meet me up at the cabin. Is she a little slow or something?" He also asked if we had been cooking blood in the cabin because it smelled like blood and hot pans all the way up the trail. We're all like, fucking nope. But we asked him what the fuck he was talking about with the girl he saw. He said he had come down the same trail that Tan had been using, and he had come up on one of you guys' little buddies, standing in the middle of the trail, looking at him slack-jawed. He had asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was just look at him. Then she smiled at him and kept lagging a little behind him, and he said he kept walking. He said he asked her if she was hurt or something and if she needed any help, but she had continued to stare. Eventually, he had been walking and turned around a bend in the trail, but when he turned around and went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. He had just assumed that she had taken some shortcut through the woods to our trailer. We tell him the whole story about what's been going on. I half expected him to say that we were full of shit, but he just listened and then sat down on one of the couches in the living room. Tanner's cousin gets back to the girl. He says that when she had kept trying to lag behind him, it had kind of weirded him the fuck out. So he tried to keep her in front of him, but no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little behind, and that he smelled this nasty smell, and it got stronger as he got to the camp. Eventually, it got really strong. She had said something really low that he didn't catch, and when he turned around, she had been right the fuck up on him, and he stepped back from her. It was at this point he asked her if she was okay, and if she wasn't, if she wanted him to carry her back the rest of the way. And she just kept staring. He said he reached out for her, as if to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance because she was off to the side of where he just put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point, we know this shit's real unless Tan's playing a joke, which we can tell he's not because he's almost pissing his pants. So they load up their rifles, we eat some more, and we just kind of sit around until around 11. To this fucking day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it was just some huge prank that my cousins played on me and just never revealed, so I would shit for the rest of my life. At around 11, the stink of copper turns into an actual nasty blood-like smell, like cooking blood and singed hair. Tan and his cousin Reese get the fuck up instantly and grab the rifles. There's like a half knocking, half clawing at the door, and I shit you not, there's this voice, and it sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs who owners teach them how to talk. It says in this halting, weirdly toned voice, "Let me the fuck in. Stop fucking playing." It made my fucking nuts creep up against my body, and one of the girls just starts crying and calling on Jesus. It was so obviously not a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence. And that's some shit I never really realized until that moment, but all people have a certain cadence when they talk, no matter what language. All people have a certain kind of rhythm to talking. This shit didn't have any kind of cadence or rhythm. One of those YouTube cats. That's what it fucking sounded like outside the door. So now I'm in full-on terror mode, and we keep yelling outside, "Who is it? Stop fucking around, man." And it just keeps saying, "In," or
"Let me the fuck in,"
for almost 15 minutes. Sorry for being on a tangent, but if you can't imagine how this shit sounded, then you can't imagine how fucked up the whole situation was. So then the smell goes away for a while, and for the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping around the woods and shit. Every couple of minutes they'll come back to the door and say something. Finally, when the smell fades away, it's around 2 in the morning, and Reese says, "Man, fuck this," and opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot into the air and says something to the effect of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." He fires 2 more times, and then from the woods, right up against the river across the trailer, it sounds like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. Then it starts screaming, and it sounds almost like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like, I seriously have never heard any shit like that, and you can hear the brush all the way over there start to shake. Reese fires into the tree line, and then starts backing into the house. We lock the door, and we can hear the shit keening and screaming. Reese says something had come out of the bushes, super low to the ground and crawling toward the cabin, and he had shot at it. Pretty much that's how the rest of the night went. It was literally screaming constantly for the next 2 hours, and we could hear shit moving out into the tree line, but it never came back up to the cabin until everyone had finally fallen asleep. Tan had been sitting in the chair watching the door with his rifle. Nobody else saw or heard this. And he told me 2 days later, after the whole thing was over. He said he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped, and he had been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. He assumed it was just one of us and had nodded off. Then he said he kind of realized something was wrong, and while pretending to be sleeping, he counted us. There were 9 people in the cabin. He basically didn't want to try to shoot at the fucking thing in the cabin and have it kill us then and there, or have Reese wake up and start shooting and then we just kill ourselves. So he stayed awake all night pretending to be asleep. He said sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittery thing, or heave like it was laughing, but then it would lay back down. The story closes pretty weak because from my perspective nothing happened. We woke up and I noticed that Tan was still a little jittery and that he'd been avoiding looking at all of us. But we ate some breakfast, packed up, and started walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin and said he'd lock up and bring me my uncle's keys, to just start walking and he'd catch up, which I didn't really want to fucking do. We got a little up the path, and then when he came running up, we basically just jogged all the way back to his house, and then his cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. Tan had gone back to lock up and looked in there, and we were too stupid to lock up a screenless window. The window was fucking open when he went in there. I'm guessing that's what it had been doing all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up and then get in among us. It walked with us all the goddamn way back to his house. And then he said, it lagged to the back of the group and looked him dead in the eyes before walking back into the woods.